Hi everyone, I'm Sharon. I'm the designer behind River Road Knits, and today I'm going to teach you how to work a Latvian braid flat. If you're familiar with my designs or my videos, you probably already know that I have a video out there for working a Latvian braid flat. That video only had a left pointing braid. Today I'm going to show you both the left and the right pointing braids, and then I'm also going to show you how to incorporate a slip stitch at the start of each row. So you can see what I have here is a small swatch. I've been working it in stockinette flat. I'm ready to work a right side row, and I've been slipping the first stitch on either end at the beginning of each row. So I'm going to continue that in my Latvian braid. This just allows you, if you're working a pattern where you have to pick up stitches later, or if you want just a nice clean edge, this is a good way to incorporate that even when you're working your braid. So this is going to be my main color. I have a nice yellow for my contrast color. So when I'm going to start this row, we're going to start with a Latvian braid that points left. So I'm going to start this row. Again, I've been slipping the first stitch on the row. When you're working a Latvian braid, it doesn't really matter which color you start with in a row. You could start with the contrast color or the main color, but since we're slipping the first stitch, let's keep the first stitch in the main color. So all I'm going to do is slip that purlwise like I would normally. Okay, now we're going to start incorporating the contrast color. So the first row of a Latvian braid, you're just going to work in a 1x1 color work with knit stitches, so continuing in stockinette. So I've joined my second color. I'm going to set myself up to work color work, one in each hand like I like to do. Get my tail out of the way. Okay, so I have the slip stitch in the main color. I've got the contrast color that I knit. So now I'm going to just knit 1x1 the whole way across the row. I don't have to do anything fancy with the yarn on this row. I'm just going to knit in a 1x1 like I would if I'm just doing a color work pattern, color work sweater, or anything. So this is the way I like to work color work. If you use them both in the same hand, that's fine. Rescue this stitch on the end. Okay, and now I'm at the end of the row because I cast on an even number of stitches. I'm expecting this last one to be knit in the yellow, so that makes sense. All right, we'll turn and we're ready to work a wrong side row. Now with Latvian braid, on this second row, this wrong side row, you're going to work in knit stitches, and we're going to knit the same color as they appear. So anytime you've got a green stitch, you'll knit that with your green yarn. But what we're going to do is we're going to cross these yarns underneath each other every time we go to use them. So I'll show you how that works. So again, we are slipping the first stitch of the row. So this first one, I will just slip like that. Okay, now I'm ready. Again, I'm going to knit this stitch. I'm ready to work with my contrast color. Sorry, with my main color, with the green. So I'm going to knit this normally. And now we're going to start seeing where that crossing comes into play. So I need to start using this yellow yarn. So I'm going to bring it underneath and knit this stitch. Okay, and now this next one, I need to use the green again. So again, I'm going to bring that underneath. Can you see how that's coming underneath the yellow yarn that I used? Okay, again, underneath, underneath, underneath. You'll go like this the whole way across the row. So these yarns, you'll see that they start to get twisted around each other. Do not bother untwisting them because they will naturally untwist themselves when we work the next row. If you're working a really, really long row, it may help to even kind of put your yarn across the room from you or at the other end of the couch so that the working yarn has room to twist on itself without getting too much in your way. And you can always just pull the twist down the yarn to give yourself a little more room to work. Does get a little cramped towards the end of a row. Okay, so now I'm gonna work my last stitch here and turn back to the right side. Now you can see what we did here. Every time we brought the yarn under, it made one of these little stripes. Now we're ready to work the right side row and the last row of our Latvian braid. Now, in this case, since we're working flat, we're going to do the same thing where we bring the yarn under every time we need to work with it, and we're going to be purling on this row. Now this differs from a Latvian braid worked in the round. If you were working in the round, first of all, you wouldn't have a wrong side row. You'd be working all on this side. But in your first row, you would cross them under each time, and then the next row you would cross them over each time, and that's what makes the arrow. You can also flip that. You can cross them over and then under, and that's going to make your braid point the opposite direction. But for working flat, we have to keep in mind it crosses the same way each time. So again, I'm slipping the first stitch of the row. Now I'm going to work. If I want, I can bring my yellow yarn under right now and purl that stitch. Okay, and again, let me hold this out of the way, bring this underneath so I can purl. That out of the way, underneath so you can purl. I'll also put my other video in the description because I spend a little bit more time in that one talking about what would happen if you didn't cross them the same direction both times. I talk a little bit more about working in the round. But the funny thing is, there are so many tutorials for working out there in the round, hardly any for working flat. And some of the ones that I found for working flat, they actually had incorrect information. So that's why I felt it necessary to make my own videos, because I didn't want anyone to be confused or end up with a result they didn't like. Okay. We are at the end of the row. I'll bring this under one more time. Okay. And you can see how these two lengths of yarn basically untwisted. So that's a nice feature. You don't have to untwist these as you go. So now you can see we've finished our left pointing braid. You can see that these arrows, these V's, they point to the left because we crossed under each time. Now I'm going to show you, if you give me a second, I'll knit a little bit more and then I'll show you how to work a Latvian braid pointing to the right. Okay, we're back with our swatch, ready to demonstrate a right pointing Latvian braid. Now what I didn't show you is that at the end of that last row that we worked, I just cut the contrast yarn because I don't need it anymore. And I worked across the wrong side row just with the main color. So just need to cut your tails long enough to weave in the ends, and you only are using your contrast color for those 3 rows. Now this one I'm going to demonstrate not slipping the first stitch at the beginning of the row. Again, it doesn't matter, it's just kind of a design detail. If you're gonna have to pick up stitches on this edge, it's helpful to have a slip stitch, but it's not a necessary thing. So I'm going to start this row. Again, I will just start with my main color, but again, it doesn't matter which color you start with, just as long as you're making sure to knit the same color into the same color stitch in the next row, but the overall effect is still going to be the same. So again, this first row is just your simple 1 by 1 color work. Now on this row, we're going to bring the yarn over every time we use it, as opposed to last time when we did the left pointing braid, we brought it under every time. So I'm going to start this row, I'm going to knit with this color, and then let me bring this over that gold. Again, I'm going to drop this green, bring the yellow over, oops, green over, okay, and again, you can see how twisted these are getting. But as I said, we don't need to worry about that for too much longer because we're about to untwist them. Okay. Back on my right side, you can already see that these are sloping up from left to right, where these were sloping down from left to right. So we can already tell that it's going to point the opposite direction. Okay. So again, this row we're going to purl. And I'm going to purl this. All right, and now bring the yellow over to purl the next stitch. Green over. Yellow over. You may, as you're working, find some easy way to hold the yarn so that you can kind of twist them around themselves. It just comes with a little bit of practice. You can judge whether you think I've had enough practice. So again, a Latvian braid in the round, what you would do is you would cross them different directions on your second and third rounds. If you were to do that working flat, you would end up with a Latvian braid that looks like a diagonal line. It will not look like a braid. You can see again in that other video I demonstrate how that would happen, what that looks like. Okay, now I've finished my row. So you can see it points the other direction. This one points to the right, that one pointed to the left. And it's just about which direction you cross the yarns. It's a nice feature to be able to incorporate into, a cuff of a sleeve, or, the hem of a sweater, or something in a hat or a cowl or anything. I mean, it's really easy to just incorporate it into a stockinette section once you know how. So I hope this was helpful. I hope now you know how to do a left and right pointing Latvian braid worked flat, and that you also know how to incorporate slip stitches into the Latvian braids. Okay, I hope this was helpful to you, and I'll see you all later. Bye.